This is more than just a wound. It's the story of getting my team to safety.
Young lady, a mark like this tells a story. Can you tell me yours?
Waitress hid her military scars from customers. Then the general walked in. Sarah Martinez adjusted her long sleeves for the 100th time that morning, ensuring the burn scars covering her arms remained hidden from customers at Bella Vista Restaurant. At 11:45 a.m. on Saturday, she was serving a particularly difficult table when retired General Robert Stone walked through the door recognizing marks that would change everything. Sarah, 26, is a former Army combat medic whose life was shattered by an IED explosion in Afghanistan 3 years ago. The blast left her with extensive burn scarring and PTSD, forcing her transition from saving lives in combat zones to serving meals in a small-town restaurant. What happened during the lunch rush would expose how quickly civilian judgment could be reversed when the truth about sacrifice and service was revealed, and how one general's recognition would transform a moment of humiliation into honor. Bella Vista Restaurant in Cedar Falls, Tennessee, a mid-range family establishment serving blue-collar workers, retirees, and weekend families. The restaurant operates on thin margins with high turnover, employing primarily young servers and older workers needing supplemental income. The atmosphere reflects small-town values, conservative customers who respect military service in theory, but often judge individuals by appearance rather than background. Weekend lunch shifts bring demanding customers who view restaurant service as beneath them, creating hostile environments for servers who depend on tips for survival. Recent economic pressures have made customers more demanding and less tolerant of perceived inadequacies in service. The restaurant's clientele includes both supportive community members and entitled individuals who treat service workers as inferior, creating social dynamics that can quickly turn ugly when prejudices surface. This setting represents the challenge many veterans face, transitioning to civilian employment, where their service is forgotten and their visible wounds become sources of discrimination rather than recognition. Sarah enlisted at 19 to escape poverty in rural Tennessee, serving as a combat medic with the 101st Airborne Division. During her second deployment in Afghanistan, her field hospital convoy was hit by a massive IED explosion. Sarah dragged 3 wounded soldiers from the burning vehicle despite her own severe burns, continuing to provide medical care until medevac arrived. The blast left her with second and third-degree burns covering 40% of her body, primarily her arms and hands. Her heroic actions under fire earned her the Bronze Star with Valor, but the physical and psychological scars ended her military career. Medically retired with disability compensation that barely covers living expenses, Sarah works at Bella Vista to supplement her income while attending community college on GI Bill benefits. She lives alone in a small apartment, avoiding social situations that might expose her scars or trigger PTSD episodes. The restaurant job provides structured routine and human interaction that helps her cope with isolation, but also exposes her to daily judgment from customers who see only her physical appearance. Sarah wears long sleeves year-round and applies heavy makeup to minimize visible scarring, desperately trying to blend into civilian life that often feels foreign and hostile. Despite her trauma, Sarah retains her medic instincts and compassionate nature. She's helped coworkers through medical emergencies and provides first aid when customers are injured. Her military training makes her exceptionally organized and efficient, but also hypervigilant about potential threats. Sarah's greatest strength is her resilience, surviving combat, devastating injuries, and difficult recovery while maintaining her commitment to helping others. Her scars represent not just personal trauma, but physical evidence of heroism under fire that saved American lives. She struggles with PTSD symptoms, but continues pushing forward, determined to build meaningful civilian life despite constant challenges. Sarah must navigate civilian employment while managing visible reminders of combat trauma that make customers uncomfortable and affect her ability to earn tips essential for survival. Her challenge is balancing the need to hide her scars to maintain employment with the psychological burden of constantly concealing evidence of her military service and sacrifice. The primary obstacle is public reaction to her appearance, customers who request different servers, managers who worry about customer complaints, and social situations where her scars trigger negative assumptions about her character or competence. Each day requires emotional strength to face potential humiliation while maintaining professional service standards. The stakes are both practical and psychological. Losing her job would create financial crisis, but constantly hiding her identity and service erodes her self-worth and sense of belonging. Sarah must find ways to survive economically while preserving her dignity and honoring the service that created her visible wounds. Sarah's decision to work at Bella Vista came from necessity rather than choice. Her disability payments covered basic living expenses, but medical bills from ongoing treatment and college costs required additional income. The restaurant industry was one of the few that would hire someone whose appearance might affect customer comfort. "I need this job," she told herself during her first interview, sleeves pulled down despite the summer heat. Manager Tony Rivera seemed understanding, focusing on her work ethic rather than her carefully concealed appearance. "We need reliable people who can handle pressure," he said, not knowing that Sarah had handled pressure most civilians couldn't imagine. The position represented both opportunity and challenge, steady income to support her education and independence, but daily exposure to judgment from people who saw only her scars rather than her service. Each shift required courage to face potential humiliation from customers who might react negatively to her appearance. Sarah accepted knowing that hiding her military background meant losing part of her identity. But civilian employment demanded conformity to appearance standards that combat veterans couldn't always meet. Her choice to work, despite her challenges, represented determination to build meaningful life after service, even if that life required constant emotional sacrifice. Sarah developed elaborate routines for concealing her scars and managing customer interactions without triggering negative reactions. She invested in specialized makeup, long-sleeved uniforms, and accessories that minimized visible evidence of her injuries while maintaining professional appearance. Her preparation included practicing responses to potential questions about her appearance or background. She rehearsed deflecting curiosity without lying about her service, finding ways to change subjects that avoided uncomfortable revelations about her combat experience. Most critically, Sarah prepared psychologically for daily reminders that her service meant nothing to civilians who judged her by appearance. She developed coping strategies for handling rude customers, insensitive comments, and social rejection that came from looking different than expected. She studied restaurant procedures, obsessively becoming exceptionally skilled at her job to compensate for any customer discomfort with her appearance. Sarah's military precision made her one of the most efficient servers, even if customers didn't always appreciate her service. Her medical training proved valuable for handling kitchen accidents and customer emergencies, though she was careful not to reveal the extent of her medical knowledge. Sarah also prepared emergency protocols for PTSD episodes that might occur during stressful shifts, ensuring she could manage symptoms without affecting her work performance. Sarah's first weeks at Bella Vista established patterns that would define her civilian work experience. She arrived early, worked efficiently, and maintained professional demeanor even when customers showed obvious discomfort with her carefully concealed appearance. Her fellow servers accepted her, quickly appreciating her reliability and work ethic. "Sarah's got our backs," said Lisa, a single mother who relied on tips for survival. Sarah's military background created natural protective instincts toward her co-workers, though she never revealed the source of her unusual competence. Customer reactions varied from polite acceptance to obvious discomfort, when her sleeves occasionally shifted to reveal glimpses of scarring. Sarah learned to read body language and adjust her service approach to minimize negative responses while maintaining professional standards. Manager Tony Rivera appreciated her consistency and leadership qualities, though he sometimes worried about customer complaints regarding her appearance. "You're one of our best servers," he told Sarah during her first review, "but some customers have mentioned concerns." The pattern was established. Sarah would excel professionally while constantly managing the psychological burden of hiding her identity and service, earning respect from co-workers while facing potential rejection from customers who didn't understand what her scars represented. Saturday's lunch rush brought the Morrison family, wealthy tourists from Nashville who immediately established themselves as demanding customers. Mrs. Morrison made pointed comments about the restaurant's standards, while her teenage daughter photographed everything for social media criticism. When Sarah approached their table, Mrs. Morrison's expression soured. "Excuse me, could we have a different server? Someone more presentable?" Her request, delivered loud enough for neighboring tables to hear, created the kind of public humiliation Sarah had learned to fear during her civilian transition. Despite Sarah's attempt to accommodate their requests professionally, the Morrisons escalated their complaints when her sleeve shifted slightly while serving drinks, revealing edge of her burn scarring. "What are those marks?" the teenage daughter asked loudly, pointing at Sarah's arm. "That's disgusting. We shouldn't have to look at that while we're eating." Other customers turned to stare as Sarah quickly adjusted her sleeve, her face burning with shame that had nothing to do with her physical scars, but everything to do with their meaning, being dismissed and mocked. Manager Tony Rivera approached the table after other customers began complaining about the unsightly server affecting their dining experience. "I'm sorry for any discomfort," Rivera told the Morrisons while avoiding eye contact with Sarah. "We'll comp your meal and arrange different service." His capitulation to customer prejudice, while Sarah stood nearby, represented the civilian employment reality she faced daily. Her service and sacrifice meant nothing when customer comfort was at stake. Rivera's embarrassment about Sarah's appearance suggested her job security was threatened by customer complaints she couldn't control. The confrontation attracted attention throughout the restaurant as other diners began discussing Sarah's appearance and the Morrison family's complaints. Social media posts started appearing as the teenage Morrison daughter shared photos criticizing the restaurant's unprofessional staff and disturbing server appearance. "This is affecting other customers," Rivera muttered to assistant manager Kate Wilson, both watching as several tables requested different servers or asked about their waitress's condition. The business pressure created immediate threat to Sarah's employment as customer complaints accumulated. Fellow servers rallied around Sarah, with Lisa openly defending her. "She's the best server we have. These people are just cruel." But their support couldn't overcome customer prejudice or protect Sarah from management concerns about business impact. Local social media groups began sharing the Morrison daughters' posts, creating viral attention that painted Sarah as health hazard rather than injured veteran. The online harassment extended beyond the restaurant, threatening her privacy and safety in the small community where she tried to build new life. The escalating situation represented every veteran's nightmare, having their service forgotten, while their visible wounds became sources of public shame and employment discrimination. Facing systematic humiliation while maintaining professional service standards tested every lesson military training had taught Sarah about honor under pressure. Her combat experience provided psychological resilience for handling hostile situations, but civilian cruelty felt different, more personal and less honorable than enemy fire. The Morrisons' attacks forced Sarah to confront her own assumptions about civilian appreciation for military service. She'd believed that good work and professional behavior would earn respect regardless of appearance, but learned that some people's prejudices couldn't be overcome through competence alone. Sarah's response to public humiliation revealed character. Developed through military service, she maintained dignity while facing attacks on her appearance and worth. Her training emphasized mission completion despite personal discomfort, and she applied those lessons to civilian employment even when customers treated her as less than human. The incident crystallized her understanding of civilian-military divide. Most people supported veterans in abstract, but struggled with visible evidence of combat service. Sarah's scars represented sacrifice they preferred to acknowledge from distance rather than encounter during their comfortable daily routines. Her military identity strengthened rather than weakened under attack, reminding her that her worth wasn't determined by customer approval, but by service to something larger than herself. As the situation escalated, Rivera faced impossible choice between protecting his employee and protecting his business from customer complaints and social media harassment. His hesitation about supporting Sarah suggested her employment was in jeopardy despite her excellent performance. The Morrison family's public humiliation campaign was gaining momentum through social media, creating pressure that small businesses couldn't ignore. Their wealth and social connections threatened the restaurant's reputation in ways that individual customer complaints couldn't match. Other customers' reactions varied from supportive to disgusted, creating divided atmosphere that made normal restaurant operations difficult. Some demanded explanations about Sarah's condition, while others expressed outrage at the Morrison family's behavior. Sarah's visible distress and professional determination to continue serving despite public humiliation created powerful emotional tension throughout the restaurant. Her co-workers watched helplessly as someone they respected faced systematic degradation for conditions beyond her control. The convergence of social media harassment, customer complaints, and management pressure created perfect storm that threatened not just Sarah's employment, but her ability to function in civilian society, where her service meant nothing and her sacrifices became sources of shame rather than honor. As the Morrison family's harassment reached its peak, with other customers joining their complaints about Sarah's unsuitable appearance, manager Rivera made the decision that broke Sarah's heart. "Sarah, maybe you should take the rest of the day off. We'll discuss your schedule adjustment tomorrow." His euphemistic language couldn't hide the reality. She was being removed from customer contact because her combat scars made people uncomfortable. "You're firing me because I got hurt serving my country," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying across the now silent restaurant. The Morrison daughter continued filming, capturing Sarah's humiliation for social media entertainment, while her mother demanded management should never have put someone like that in customer service. Sarah felt every eye in the restaurant watching as she untied her apron, her hands shaking not from fear, but from rage at civilian society that claimed to support veterans while treating their visible wounds as character flaws. 3 years of hiding her scars, suppressing her identity, and accepting second-class treatment crystallized into this moment of public rejection. "Those marks you find so disgusting," Sarah said, her voice stronger now. "I got those dragging wounded soldiers out of burning vehicles in Afghanistan. But I understand. My sacrifice for your freedom is less important than your comfortable dining experience." The restaurant fell completely silent as Sarah's words hung in the air, forcing everyone to confront the reality they'd been too self-absorbed to recognize. But the damage was done. Her career at Bella Vista was over, her financial security destroyed, and her faith in civilian appreciation for military service shattered completely. Standing in the middle of the restaurant with her military service finally exposed and her employment terminated, Sarah faced the fundamental choice that would define her future relationship with civilian society: retreat into isolation and accept that her sacrifices meant nothing to people who claim to honor veterans, or stand firm in her dignity and demand recognition for her service regardless of its visible cost. The easy path was withdrawal. Gather her belongings, leave quietly, and disappear into the margins of society, where wounded veterans often found themselves after discovering that civilian support was conditional on not making people uncomfortable with evidence of what military service actually required. But Sarah looked around the restaurant at faces showing everything from shame to continued disgust, and realized this moment represented every veteran who'd ever been judged by their visible wounds rather than honored for their invisible courage. Her humiliation could become their validation or their continued marginalization. "If I leave quietly, I prove their point that veterans like me should hide," Sarah thought, feeling 3 years of suppressed military pride resurging. "But if I stand here and own my service, maybe the next veteran won't have to hide their scars." Her decision crystallized around deeper truth. Civilian society's comfort was built on veterans' willingness to make their sacrifices invisible, allowing Americans to benefit from military protection while avoiding confrontation with its actual costs. Sarah's scars represented reality that comfortable civilians preferred to ignore. The ultimate stakes transcended her personal situation, whether wounded veterans would continue accepting marginalization to spare civilian sensibilities, or whether they would demand recognition and respect regardless of how their service had changed their appearance. Sarah made the choice that would transform her humiliation into honor. Instead of leaving quietly, she would stand her ground and educate everyone present about what her scars actually represented. "You want to know about these marks," she said, rolling up her sleeves completely for the first time since starting work at the restaurant. The extensive burn scarring covering her arms from wrists to shoulders told a story of heroism that silenced even the Morrison family's complaints. IED explosion Afghanistan 3 years ago. I was pulling wounded American soldiers out of burning vehicles when the second blast hit me. Her voice carried military bearing that commanded attention. I spent 14 months in burn units, learning to use my hands again so I could serve coffee to people who think my sacrifices are disgusting. The contrast between her heroic service and their petty complaints created powerful emotional impact throughout the restaurant. Sarah's transformation from apologetic server to proud veteran shifted the entire atmosphere as customers realized they'd been witnessing discrimination against someone who'd literally risked everything for their freedom. Her courage in revealing her service forced everyone to confront their own prejudices and assumptions about what veterans looked like and deserved. As Sarah stood, with her scarred arms fully exposed, explaining her service to the silent restaurant, she felt both vulnerable and empowered. For the first time since her injuries, she wasn't hiding her military identity or apologizing for her appearance. The emotional preparation for this moment had taken 3 years of therapy, self-doubt, and gradual acceptance that her worth wasn't determined by civilian approval. Her military training provided the psychological framework for standing firm under hostile scrutiny, maintain bearing state facts clearly, and never retreat from honorable positions regardless of opposition. Sarah applied combat lessons to civilian confrontation, treating the Morrison family's continued harassment as enemy action that required tactical response. She prepared to explain her Bronze Star citation, her medical training that saved lives in combat zones, and her ongoing recovery that enabled her to serve customers who benefited from freedoms her sacrifice had helped protect. Each detail would be delivered with military precision, designed to educate rather than condemn. Most importantly, Sarah prepared to accept whatever consequences came from revealing her true identity: potential job loss, continued discrimination, or social media harassment that could affect her college plans and future employment. But hiding had cost her too much dignity to continue. The confrontation reached its peak when Mrs. Morrison, seemingly unmoved by Sarah's service revelation, doubled down on her position. "I don't care what she did overseas. This is a restaurant, not a military hospital. We shouldn't have to look at that during our meal." Her callous dismissal of Sarah's sacrifice created immediate backlash from other customers who'd been shamed into recognizing their own prejudices. "Lady, show some respect," called out an elderly man from corner booth. "That girl earned those scars protecting your freedom to eat lunch safely." But the Morrison daughter continued filming, now capturing her mother's anti-veteran sentiments for social media that would have consequences neither anticipated. "This is going viral," she announced proudly, not realizing she was documenting discrimination against a decorated combat veteran. Manager Rivera faced impossible decisions: support his employees' dignity or capitulate to customer pressure that threatened his business. His choice would determine whether Bella Vista became known for honoring veterans or discriminating against them. The restaurant's atmosphere was electric with tension as customers chose sides, creating division that reflected broader societal attitudes toward veterans whose service came with visible costs that made comfortable civilians uncomfortable. At the climactic moment, retired General Robert Stone entered Bella Vista with his wife for their regular Saturday lunch, immediately sensing the tension and focusing on Sarah's exposed, scarred arms with sharp recognition that came from decades of military experience. "Those are combat burns," he said quietly to his wife, approaching Sarah's position. "Second and third degree, probably from vehicle explosion." His professional assessment carried authority that commanded attention from everyone present, including the Morrison family, whose complaints suddenly seemed petty and uninformed. General Stone's presence transformed the dynamic immediately, as his military bearing and obvious seniority created respectful silence throughout the restaurant. His focus on Sarah rather than the complaining customers sent clear message about whose perspective mattered in this situation. "Young lady," he addressed Sarah directly, "those scars tell a story. Would you mind sharing where you served?" His respectful inquiry treated her service as honor rather than embarrassment, providing the recognition she'd been denied since returning home. Mrs. Morrison attempted to enlist General Stone's support for her position. "Sir, surely you understand our concerns about appropriate customer service standards." But her assumption that military leadership would support discrimination against wounded veterans revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of military values. General Stone's response was immediate and decisive. "Madam, what I understand is that you're complaining about visible evidence of heroism. This young woman's scars represent sacrifice you clearly don't comprehend or appreciate." His rebuke silenced the Morrison family while validating Sarah's service publicly, but the situation became more complex when General Stone began asking specific questions about Sarah's unit deployment location and combat experience. 101st Airborne Field Hospital Convoy, Afghanistan, 2022. Sarah responded, not knowing these details would trigger powerful recognition in the general's memory. Route Falcon, outside Kandahar. General Stone asked, his voice suddenly filled with emotion. When Sarah confirmed the location, the general's composure broke. "You saved my son, Lieutenant James Stone, 2nd Platoon. You dragged him out of that burning vehicle and kept him alive until medevac arrived." The revelation that Sarah had saved General Stone's son transformed every dynamic in the restaurant as the abstract concept of military service became intensely personal story of heroism and family salvation. The general's emotional response proved that Sarah's scars represented not just her sacrifice, but lives she'd preserved through her courage. "Jamie told me about the medic who wouldn't leave him." General Stone continued, tears visible in his eyes. "Said she kept working on wounded soldiers even after getting burned herself. He's alive because of you." His testimony provided concrete evidence of Sarah's heroism that even the Morrison family couldn't dismiss or diminish. The moment transcended individual discrimination to become a broader lesson about recognizing and honoring service that came with visible costs. General Stone's personal gratitude demonstrated why wounded veterans deserved respect rather than rejection from the society they'd protected. Sarah's response showed military humility. "I was just doing my job, sir. Any medic would have done the same." But General Stone corrected her. "No, what you did was extraordinary. You saved 8 soldiers that day, including my son, while suffering injuries that ended your military career." The restaurant's atmosphere shifted completely as customers realized they'd witnessed discrimination against someone whose heroism had directly affected a general's family, making abstract military service tangibly personal and undeniably heroic. General Stone's public recognition of Sarah's heroism created immediate transformation in how everyone present viewed both her service and their own behavior. His detailed account of her actions under fire, continuing medical treatment while severely burned, refusing evacuation until all wounded were stable, earning Bronze Star for valor, provided education about what military service actually required. The Morrison family's position became completely untenable as their complaints about Sarah's appearance were revealed as discrimination against a decorated hero whose sacrifices had saved American lives. Mrs. Morrison attempted weak apology. "We didn't know about her military service." But General Stone responded firmly, "Her service was never your business. Her dignity and respect were always your responsibility." Manager Rivera faced easy decision: now publicly support his heroic employee or face community backlash for discriminating against a war hero whose story was already spreading through social media in Sarah's favor rather than against her. The breakthrough extended beyond immediate vindication. Sarah's courage in revealing her service created an educational moment that would influence how the community treated veterans. While General Stone's testimony provided powerful validation that her sacrifices mattered and were remembered by those whose lives she'd saved, General Stone's revelation transformed Sarah from discriminated employee to honored hero as customers approached to thank her for her service and apologize for their earlier behavior. The Morrison family left quietly, their social media harassment backfiring as the community learned the truth about Sarah's heroism. Manager Rivera offered Sarah promotion to assistant manager with raise and public company support for her continued service to both military and civilian communities. Her story spread throughout Cedar Falls, creating positive recognition that honored rather than hidden her sacrifice. Most importantly, Sarah finally felt integrated into civilian community that recognized and valued her military service rather than demanding she hide its evidence. Within days of General Stone's revelation, Sarah's story spread throughout Cedar Falls and beyond through social media support rather than harassment. Local veterans organizations invited her to speak about the challenges facing wounded warriors transitioning to civilian employment, while Bella Vista became known as veteran-friendly establishment that honored rather than hidden military service. Sarah accepted promotion to assistant manager, using her position to implement hiring policies that supported veteran employment and training programs that educated staff about military service and combat injuries. Her leadership demonstrated how wounded veterans could contribute exceptional value to civilian workplaces when given opportunity and respect. The Morrison family faced community backlash for their treatment of a decorated veteran, learning that discriminating against military heroes carried social consequences in communities that genuinely supported those who served. Their viral harassment campaign backfired completely, creating positive recognition for Sarah rather than negative attention. Sarah's courage in revealing her service inspired other local veterans to stop hiding their military backgrounds and seek employment that utilized their skills rather than concealed their sacrifices. 2 years later, Sarah's advocacy work influenced employment practices throughout Tennessee as businesses implemented veteran-friendly policies that focused on capabilities rather than appearance-based discrimination. Her story became template for supporting wounded warriors transitioning to civilian careers. Legislative efforts emerged from her experience, creating workplace protections for veterans whose service-related injuries might affect their appearance, but not their job performance. Sarah testified before state committees about employment discrimination facing wounded veterans, providing personal testimony that influenced policy development. Educational programs in schools and businesses used Sarah's story to teach about military service combat injuries and community responsibility for supporting veterans whose sacrifices enabled civilian freedoms. Her experience bridged civilian-military understanding gaps that had created discrimination patterns. Bella Vista became regional model for veteran employment, hiring multiple former service members and creating workplace culture that celebrated rather than concealed military backgrounds. The restaurant's success proved that supporting veterans enhanced rather than compromised business effectiveness. National veterans organizations adopted Sarah's integration strategies, helping other wounded warriors navigate civilian employment challenges while maintaining dignity and receiving recognition for their service rather than discrimination for its visible costs. Sarah evolved from isolated, ashamed veteran hiding her service to confident advocate who celebrated her military identity while building successful civilian career. Her scars became sources of pride rather than shame as she learned to educate rather than hide from civilian society. She completed her degree in business management and opened her own restaurant that specifically employed veterans, creating a workplace environment where military service was valued and combat injuries were recognized as evidence of heroism rather than liability. "My scars tell a story of service, not shame," Sarah often tells audiences. "They represent lives saved and freedoms protected, and I'm proud of every mark." Sarah's story proves that visible wounds don't diminish invisible courage, and that society benefits when veterans are honored rather than hidden. True patriotism requires supporting those who served, especially when their service came with costs that make comfortable civilians uncomfortable. Every scar tells a story worth respecting. Today, Sarah Martinez owns 3 restaurants throughout Tennessee that prioritize veteran employment and community education about military service. Her original scars have faded somewhat, but her pride in them has only grown stronger. The Bella Vista location where she first revealed her service now displays a memorial honoring local veterans with Sarah's Bronze Star citation prominently featured alongside stories of other community heroes. General Stone remains a regular customer and strong supporter of her veteran advocacy work, often bringing his son James to demonstrate the continuing bond between the medic who saved his life and the family who never forgot her sacrifice. The Morrison family's attempted humiliation has become a cautionary tale about the importance of recognizing service before judging appearance, while Sarah's courage in standing firm for her dignity has inspired countless other veterans to stop hiding their honorable service from a society that should celebrate rather than shame those who bear visible proof of their sacrifice for American freedom.